The Dangerous Confidence Code: How to Act Without Fear and Eliminate Self-Doubt. Published by Limitless Audiobook. Introduction. Confidence is not something you wait for, it is something you decide. Yet for years, you've been taught the opposite. You were told to prepare more, think more, and wait until you feel ready. But the truth is, that moment never comes. The longer you wait, the louder your doubts become, and the smaller your actions get. Fear doesn't disappear with time, it grows in silence. Self-doubt doesn't fade on its own, it feeds on hesitation. And without realizing it, you begin to build a life around avoidance instead of action. Opportunities are missed, words are left unspoken, and decisions are delayed, all because you're waiting for a feeling that was never meant to come first. Real confidence works differently. It doesn't show up before action, it is created because of it. It is built in the moments when you move forward despite uncertainty, when you speak even with a shaking voice, when you decide without having all the answers. This is what I call dangerous confidence, the ability to act without needing certainty, approval, or perfect conditions. In this audiobook, we will break down the patterns that keep you stuck and replace them with principles that force you into action. You will learn how to stop overthinking, make faster decisions, use fear as fuel, and build a level of self-trust that cannot be shaken. Step by step, you will begin to see that confidence is not a personality trait, it is a skill you train. This is not about becoming fearless, it is about becoming unstoppable, even when fear is present. It is about eliminating hesitation and building a mindset that moves forward no matter what. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop waiting to feel ready. Take action first. A powerful life begins the moment you stop negotiating with hesitation. Right now there are things you know you should be doing, calls you should make, ideas you should start, decisions you should take, but something keeps holding you back. That something often disguises itself as logic. It tells you to wait a little longer, to prepare a bit more, to feel more confident before you begin. But that voice is not wisdom, it is fear, wearing a calm and reasonable mask. Readiness is one of the biggest illusions ever created. It feels real, but it has no clear definition. How do you actually know when you're ready? What does it feel like? Most people can't answer that, and yet they keep waiting for it. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and sometimes even years pass while they stand still, convincing themselves they're just not ready yet. The truth is, readiness is not something you discover. It is something you create by moving forward. Think about every skill you've ever developed in your life. You didn't start because you felt ready. You started because you had no other choice, or because you simply took the first step. Confidence didn't come before the action, it came after you tried, adjusted, failed, and tried again. Action is what builds belief. Without action, confidence remains nothing more than an idea. Waiting to feel ready is dangerous because it trains your mind to delay. Every time you hesitate, you reinforce a pattern. Your brain learns that hesitation is the default response to uncertainty. Over time, this becomes automatic. You don't even realize it anymore, you just feel stuck. Opportunities appear, but instead of moving toward them, you analyze them, question them, and eventually watch them pass, not because you lack ability, but because you've trained yourself to wait. Now here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking, "Am I ready?" and start asking, "What is the smallest action I can take right now?" That one question changes everything. It removes pressure, it removes perfection, it removes the illusion that you need to have everything figured out. Instead of focusing on the entire journey, you focus on the next step. And once you take that step, something powerful happens. You gain momentum. Momentum is the real source of confidence. Not thinking, not planning, not waiting, moving. When you take action, even a small one, you send a message to your brain, "I act," and that identity begins to form. The more you act, the stronger that identity becomes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits, and you start seeing yourself as someone who moves. That shift alone can change the direction of your entire life. You also need to understand that clarity comes after action, not before it. Many people believe they need to have a clear plan before they begin, but clarity is a result, not a requirement. You figure things out by doing, not by thinking endlessly. Action gives you feedback. It shows you what works, what doesn't, what needs to change. Without action, you're stuck in theory. With action, you enter reality. There will never be a perfect moment. Conditions will never be fully aligned. You will never feel 100% certain, and that's not a problem. It's the way life works. The people who move forward are not the ones who feel ready. They are the ones who decide to act despite not feeling ready. They understand that discomfort is part of progress, not a sign to stop. So from this point forward, make a simple rule for yourself. Act before you feel ready. When you catch yourself hesitating, don't negotiate with it. Move. Take the step. Send the message. Start the task. Speak the words. Break the pattern immediately. The longer you wait, the stronger hesitation becomes. The faster you act, the weaker it gets. This is where dangerous confidence begins, not in big dramatic moments, but in small, consistent decisions to act without permission from your emotions. You don't need to eliminate fear to move. You just need to stop obeying it. And once you do that, you'll realize something powerful. The version of you you've been waiting to become only exists on the other side of action. Stop waiting. Start moving. That is the first code. Chapter 2. Kill the habit of overthinking. Decide faster. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from thinking less and deciding faster. Overthinking feels productive because your mind is busy, but in reality, it keeps you trapped in a loop where nothing moves forward. You replay scenarios, analyze possibilities, and search for the perfect answer, but the more you think, the more uncertain you become. What starts as a desire to make the right decision slowly turns into a habit of avoiding any decision at all. Overthinking is not intelligence. It is fear, trying to protect you from making a mistake. Your mind is wired to keep you safe, not to make you successful. So when you face uncertainty, it tries to calculate every possible outcome to avoid risk. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot predict everything. You cannot control every variable. And the attempt to do so only delays action, drains energy, and weakens your confidence. Every time you overthink, you send a signal to yourself. I don't trust my judgment. That message gets repeated again and again until it becomes your identity. You start believing that you are someone who needs more time, more information, more certainty. But the truth is, you already know more than enough to take the next step. The problem is not a lack of knowledge. It is a lack of decision. Decisiveness is a skill, and like any skill, it must be trained. It begins with understanding that no decision will ever be perfect. There will always be unknowns. There will always be risks. Waiting for perfect certainty is a guaranteed way to stay stuck. Instead, you must learn to make the best decision you can with the information you have, and then move. Speed is your advantage. The faster you decide, the faster you learn. And the faster you learn, the faster you improve. People who move quickly are not always right, but they are always progressing. People who overthink may avoid mistakes in the short term, but they also avoid growth in the long term. Progress belongs to those who act, not those who analyze endlessly. You also need to recognize the hidden cost of delay. Every decision you avoid creates mental weight. It sits in the back of your mind, taking up space and draining your focus. This is why overthinkers often feel overwhelmed. They are carrying too many unfinished decisions. When you start deciding quickly, you clear that mental clutter. You free up energy. You create momentum. One powerful shift you can make is to set a limit on how long you allow yourself to think. Give yourself a short window, minutes, not days, to evaluate your options. Then decide. This forces your brain to focus on what matters instead of wandering through endless possibilities. It also trains you to trust your instincts instead of doubting them. Another key is to simplify your decisions. Not everything deserves deep analysis. In fact, most daily decisions are low risk and reversible. You can adjust, correct, and improve as you go. But when you treat every decision as if it will define your entire life, you create unnecessary pressure. That pressure leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to inaction. Confidence grows when you see yourself making decisions and handling the results. Even if a decision turns out to be wrong, you gain something valuable: experience. You learn what doesn't work. You refine your judgment. And most importantly, you prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty. That is real confidence. You must also learn to separate thinking from acting. Thinking has its place, but it should lead to action, not replace it. A simple rule you can follow is this: once you've thought about something enough to understand the basics, it's time to act. Do not let thinking become your escape. Use it as a tool, not a hiding place. There will be moments when your mind tries to pull you back into the loop. It will say, "What if this goes wrong?" Or "What if there's a better option?" In those moments, remind yourself that doing something is always better than doing nothing. Action gives you direction. Inaction keeps you stuck. Deciding faster does not mean being careless. It means being willing to move forward without needing perfect certainty. It means trusting that you can figure things out along the way. It means accepting that mistakes are part of progress, not something to be avoided at all costs. The people who build strong confidence are not the ones who always make the right decisions. They are the ones who make decisions quickly and adapt just as quickly. They don't waste time questioning themselves after every choice. They move, adjust, and keep going. So from now on, stop giving your doubts unlimited time to speak. Limit your thinking. Make the call. Take the step. Send the message. Choose a direction and commit to it. Because confidence is not built in moments of perfect clarity, it is built in moments of decisive action. Kill the habit of overthinking, and you will unlock a level of freedom most people never experience. Chapter 3. Make fear your signal, not your stop sign. Fear is not the enemy you've been taught to avoid. It is the signal you've been trained to misunderstand. Every time you feel that tightness in your chest, that hesitation before speaking, that urge to step back instead of forward, your instinct tells you to stop. But what if that feeling is not a warning to retreat, but a sign that you're exactly where you need to be? Fear shows up at the edge of growth. It appears when you're about to do something unfamiliar, something uncertain, something that could change your life. It does not show up when you are safe, comfortable, and repeating the same patterns. That means if you never feel fear, you are probably not moving forward. You are staying within the limits of what you already know, and those limits will eventually define your entire life. The problem is not fear itself. It is your relationship with it. Most people treat fear like a stop sign. The moment they feel it, they slow down, hesitate, and often turn back. Over time, this reaction becomes automatic. Fear appears, and without thinking, they obey it. They don't question it. They don't challenge it. They simply follow it. And in doing so, they unknowingly shrink their own potential. But fear is not always telling the truth. It exaggerates risk. It magnifies consequences. It creates scenarios that feel real, but are often far from reality. Your mind is trying to protect you, but it does so by limiting you. It would rather keep you safe and stuck than uncertain and growing. If you allow fear to guide your decisions, your life will always be built around avoidance. Now imagine flipping that pattern. Instead of seeing fear as a reason to stop, you begin to see it as a signal to move. The moment you feel it, you recognize it as a marker. This matters. This is where growth is. That shift alone can change everything. Fear no longer controls you. It directs you toward opportunity. Think about the moments you've avoided in your life. The conversation you didn't start, the idea you didn't pursue, the risk you didn't take. In almost every case, fear was present, and because you listened to it, those moments passed. But what if, instead of stepping back, you had stepped forward? What if you had used fear as a compass instead of a barrier? Acting in the presence of fear is the foundation of dangerous confidence. It is not about eliminating fear, it is about refusing to obey it. You will still feel nervous, your voice may still shake, your thoughts may still race, but you move anyway, and every time you do, something powerful happens. You weaken fear's control over you. Fear loses power through exposure. The more you face it, the more familiar it becomes. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. What once stopped you now barely slows you down. This is how confidence is built. Not by avoiding fear, but by walking through it repeatedly until it no longer defines your actions. You also begin to realize that fear is often pointing towards something valuable. It shows up before important conversations, before big decisions, before meaningful changes. It does not appear randomly. It appears when something is at stake. And instead of seeing that as a reason to hesitate, you can see it as a reason to lean in. Another important truth is this: the cost of avoiding fear is always greater than the cost of facing it. When you avoid fear, you avoid growth, opportunity, and progress. You stay where you are. You repeat the same patterns, and over time, that becomes your life. But when you face fear, even if you struggle, even if you make mistakes, you move forward. You expand your limits. You become stronger. You don't need to take massive leaps to apply this principle. Start small. The next time you feel fear, pause for a moment and recognize it. Don't run from it. Don't suppress it. Acknowledge it. Then take one step forward. It could be something simple, a message, a decision, a small action. What matters is not the size of the step, but the direction. As you repeat this process, you train your mind to respond differently. Fear no longer triggers avoidance, it triggers action. That is a complete shift in identity. You become someone who moves toward discomfort instead of away from it. And that identity will take you further than talent, intelligence, or luck ever could. There will always be fear. It will show up in new forms as you grow, but instead of seeing that as a problem, you begin to welcome it, because now you understand what it means. It means you are expanding. It means you are stepping into something bigger. It means you are alive in the process of becoming more. So the next time fear appears, don't ask how to get rid of it. Ask what it's pointing you toward. Then take a step in that direction, not because you feel ready, but because you've decided that fear will no longer decide for you. Make fear your signal, not your stop sign. Chapter 4. Build proof through action, not words. Confidence does not come from what you say to yourself. It comes from what you show yourself. You can repeat affirmations every morning. Tell yourself that you are capable, strong, and ready. But if your actions don't support those words, your mind will not believe them. Your brain is not convinced by language alone. It is convinced by evidence. And that evidence is built through action. This is where many people go wrong. They focus on thinking differently before they start acting differently. They try to feel confident first, hoping that the feeling will push them into action. But the truth works in reverse. Action creates evidence, and evidence builds belief. Without that proof, confidence remains fragile. It disappears the moment things get difficult, because it was never rooted in experience. Every action you take is a message to yourself. When you follow through on something, no matter how small, you tell your mind, I can trust myself. When you hesitate, delay, or avoid, you send the opposite message. Over time, these messages stack up. They form an identity. You either become someone who acts or someone who talks about acting. And that difference is everything. Think about how trust works in any relationship. You don't trust someone because they say the right things. You trust them because they consistently do what they say. The same rule applies to yourself. Self-trust is built through consistency, not intention. You don't gain confidence by promising to change. You gain it by proving, again and again, that you follow through. The most powerful way to build that proof is through small, repeated actions. You don't need to make dramatic changes overnight. In fact, trying to do too much too quickly often leads to failure, which weakens your belief. Instead, Focus on actions that are simple but consistent. Show up when you say you will. Complete what you start. Take steps even when you don't feel like it. These small wins may seem insignificant, but they compound over time into something powerful. Each completed action becomes a piece of evidence. Each step forward strengthens your identity, and gradually you begin to see yourself differently. You stop questioning whether you are capable because you have proof. You stop doubting your ability to follow through because you've done it repeatedly. This is how real confidence is built, not through motivation, but through evidence. You also need to understand that words can sometimes become a trap. Talking about your goals, planning endlessly, or imagining success can create a false sense of progress. It feels like you're moving forward, but nothing has actually changed. This can be dangerous because it satisfies your mind without requiring action. You feel good in the moment, but you remain stuck in the same place. Action, on the other hand, forces reality. It removes illusion. When you act, you see what works and what doesn't. You face resistance. You encounter challenges. But within those challenges, you gain something far more valuable than comfort. You gain experience, and experience is the foundation of confidence. There will be moments when your actions don't lead to immediate success. You may try something and fail. You may put in effort and not see results right away. This is where many people lose confidence, but only because they misunderstand the process. The goal is not perfection, the goal is proof. Even when you fail, you are still building evidence that you are someone who acts. That alone puts you ahead of those who never try. You must shift your focus from outcomes to consistency. Instead of asking, "Did this work?" ask, "Did I show up?" Because showing up is what builds identity, and identity is what sustains confidence. Results will come, but they are a byproduct of repeated action, not the starting point. Another important principle is to make your actions visible to yourself. Track your progress. Keep a record of what you've done. When doubt appears, and it will, you need something real to look back on. You need to remind yourself, "I've done this before. I can do it again." That reminder is not based on hope. It is based on evidence. Over time, something begins to shift inside you. You no longer rely on motivation to act. You no longer wait for the right mood. Action becomes your default. And with that shift comes a deeper level of confidence, one that is not easily shaken because it is built on proof. This is the difference between fragile confidence and dangerous confidence. Fragile confidence depends on feelings. Dangerous confidence depends on evidence. It doesn't disappear when things get hard because it has been tested. It has been earned. So from this point forward, stop trying to convince yourself with words. Stop waiting to feel different. Start building proof. Take action, no matter how small. Follow through, no matter how simple. Show yourself again and again that you are someone who moves, because in the end, you don't become confident by saying it. You become confident by proving it. Chapter 5. Detach from outcomes. Focus on action. Pressure is created the moment you tie your identity to the result. When every action feels like it must succeed, every step becomes heavier. You start thinking about what could go wrong, how others might judge you, and what failure might mean about you as a person. This is where hesitation is born, not from lack of ability, but from too much attachment to the outcome. The truth is, you cannot control outcomes. You can influence them. You can work toward them, but you cannot guarantee them. There are too many variables outside your control. Other people, timing, circumstances, unexpected events. When you focus entirely on results, you place your confidence on something unstable, and anything unstable will eventually create anxiety. This is why many people struggle to act. They are not afraid of the action itself. They are afraid of what the outcome might be. They want certainty before they begin. They want guarantees before they move. But life does not offer guarantees. It only offers opportunities, and those opportunities require action without assurance. Detaching from outcomes does not mean you stop caring. It means you shift your focus from what you cannot control to what you can. Your effort, your consistency, your decisions. These are within your control. When you anchor your attention there, something changes. The pressure decreases, the fear weakens, and action becomes easier. Think about the difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. When you are obsessed with winning, every move feels risky. You become cautious. You hold back. But when you focus on playing your best, regardless of the result, you become free. You take chances. You express yourself. You perform at a higher level because you are not weighed down by fear. The same principle applies to every area of your life. Whether you are starting a project, having a conversation, or making a decision, your job is not to guarantee success. Your job is to show up fully and take action. The result will follow its own path, but your responsibility is to act with intention and commitment. Attachment to outcomes also creates emotional instability. When things go well, you feel high. When they don't, you feel low. Your confidence rises and falls based on external results. This makes you unpredictable and inconsistent. But when you detach, you create stability. You remain focused regardless of what happens. You continue moving forward, even when results are slow or uncertain. You must learn to measure progress differently. Instead of asking, "Did I succeed?" ask, "Did I take action?" Instead of asking, "Did this work?" ask, "Did I give my best effort?" These questions keep you grounded in what you control, and over time, this mindset builds a deeper form of confidence, one that is not dependent on immediate success. Another benefit of detachment is clarity. When you are not emotionally tied to a specific outcome, you can see things more objectively. You can adjust your approach. You can learn from feedback. You can make better decisions because you are not blinded by the need for a particular result. You become flexible instead of rigid. It's important to understand that results still matter, but they are not the starting point. They are the consequence of consistent action. When you focus on action, results improve naturally. But when you focus only on results, action becomes difficult. That is why so many people stay stuck. They are chasing outcomes without building the habits that produce them. You will face moments where outcomes don't go your way. Plans will fail. Efforts will not always pay off immediately. In those moments, your ability to detach will determine whether you continue or stop. If you are attached, you will feel discouraged and pull back. If you are detached, you will adjust and keep moving. This does not mean ignoring your goals. It means approaching them with a different mindset. You still aim high. You still work hard, but you do not let the result define your worth or control your actions. You stay focused on the process, knowing that the process is what eventually leads to success. One of the simplest ways to practice this is to commit to action regardless of how you feel about the outcome. Decide in advance that you will act, whether you feel confident or not, whether the result is certain or not. This removes negotiation. It creates discipline, and discipline is what sustains action over time. When you detach from outcomes, you also free yourself from unnecessary fear. You stop worrying about things you cannot control. You stop delaying because of what if. You begin to act more boldly, more consistently, and more effectively. And in doing so, you build a level of confidence that is not easily shaken. Dangerous confidence is not about always winning. It is about always acting. It is about showing up, taking steps, and moving forward regardless of the result. Because in the long run, the person who focuses on action will always outperform the person who waits for certainty. So shift your focus. Let go of the need to control every outcome. Put your energy into what you can control, your actions, and trust that if you keep moving, the results will eventually follow. Chapter 6. Accept embarrassment. It's the price of growth. Embarrassment is one of the most powerful forces holding you back, yet it is rarely talked about directly. It shows up in subtle ways: the hesitation before speaking, the decision to stay silent, the choice to avoid trying something new. It whispers a simple fear: what will people think? And more often than not, that question is enough to stop you. But here's the truth you need to understand. Embarrassment is not a danger, it is a cost. And like any cost, it must be paid if you want to grow. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, there is a chance you will look inexperienced, uncertain, or imperfect. You might say the wrong thing. You might make a mistake. You might not perform as well as you hoped. And in those moments you feel exposed. That feeling is what most people try to avoid. They choose safety over progress, silence over expression, comfort over growth. The problem is, when you avoid embarrassment, you also avoid improvement. You stay within the boundaries of what you already know. You never test your limits. You never develop new skills. And over time your world becomes smaller, not because you lack potential, but because you refuse to risk how you might be perceived. You need to reframe what embarrassment actually means. It is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are trying. It is evidence that you are doing something new, something challenging, something that has the potential to move your life forward. The people who grow the most are not the ones who avoid embarrassment. They are the ones who become comfortable with it. Think about any skill you admire in others, whether it's speaking confidently, leading effectively, or performing at a high level. None of it was built without moments of awkwardness and mistakes. Behind every confident person is a long history of uncomfortable experiences that they chose not to run from. They faced them, learned from them, and continued anyway. Another important truth is this: people are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. Most people are too focused on their own lives, their own insecurities, their own concerns. What feels like a big moment to you is often a small, passing moment to everyone else. And even if someone does notice your mistake, it rarely has any lasting impact. The fear of embarrassment is often much bigger in your mind than in reality. You imagine worst-case scenarios, you exaggerate outcomes, and you create pressure that doesn't need to exist. But once you actually face the situation, you realize it's not as bad as you expected, and that realization weakens the fear. You must train yourself to act despite the possibility of embarrassment, not because it feels comfortable, but because it is necessary. Growth requires exposure. It requires you to be seen before you are ready, to try before you are perfect, to risk failure in front of others. There is no way around it. One of the most effective ways to build this mindset is to deliberately put yourself in situations where embarrassment is possible. Speak up more often. Try new things. Take small social risks. Each time you do this, you expand your tolerance. What once felt uncomfortable becomes normal. What once stopped you becomes something you barely think about. Over time, embarrassment loses its power. It no longer controls your decisions. You stop filtering every action through the question, "How will this look?" and start focusing on what actually matters: growth, progress, and experience. That shift is where real confidence begins to form. It's also important to understand that avoiding embarrassment does not protect you, it limits you. You might avoid a few uncomfortable moments, but in doing so, you miss out on opportunities, connections, and achievements. You trade short-term comfort for long-term regret. And regret is far heavier than embarrassment will ever be. You have to decide which cost you are willing to pay. The cost of embarrassment is temporary. It passes quickly. The cost of staying stuck can last for years. When you accept embarrassment as part of the process, something changes inside you. You stop trying to appear perfect. You stop waiting until everything is just right. You start acting more freely, more naturally, more boldly, and that freedom allows you to grow faster than most people around you. Dangerous confidence is not about always looking good. It is about being willing to look imperfect while you improve. It is about valuing progress more than perception. It is about understanding that every awkward moment is a step forward, not a step back. So the next time you feel that hesitation, that fear of how you might be seen, remind yourself of this: embarrassment is the price, not the problem. Pay it willingly, because on the other side of that discomfort is a version of you that is stronger, more capable, and far more confident than the one who chose to stay safe. Chapter 7. Eliminate the need for approval. Trust yourself. The moment you start living for approval, you stop living for yourself. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, through habits you barely notice. You begin to filter your words before you speak. You adjust your actions based on how they might be perceived. You hesitate, not because you don't know what to do, but because you're unsure how it will be received. And without realizing it, you hand over control of your life to the opinions of others. The need for approval is one of the most limiting forces you can carry. It makes you dependent. It keeps you cautious. It forces you to constantly seek validation before making decisions. And the more you rely on it, the weaker your confidence becomes, because confidence cannot grow in a mind that is always asking, "Is this okay?" You have to understand that approval is unpredictable. What one person likes, another may not. What is praised in one moment may be criticized in another. If you base your actions on external validation, you will always be adjusting, always second-guessing, always uncertain. You will never feel stable because your foundation is built on something you cannot control. This is why so many people feel stuck. They are not lacking ability. They are lacking independence. They have trained themselves to look outward before they look inward. They wait for permission before they act. And when that permission doesn't come, they hesitate or stop altogether. Real confidence begins when you shift that focus. Instead of asking, "Do others approve of this?" you start asking, "Do I believe in this?" That question changes everything. It brings the responsibility back to you. It forces you to think, to decide, to trust your own judgment. Trusting yourself is not something that happens overnight. It is built the same way confidence is built, through action. Every time you make a decision without seeking approval, you strengthen that trust. Every time you follow your own direction, even when it feels uncertain, you reinforce the belief that you can rely on yourself. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. You may doubt your choices. You may wonder if you're making the right decision. That's normal. You've spent years, maybe your entire life, looking outward for validation. Breaking that pattern takes time, but the more you practice it, the stronger it becomes. You also need to accept that not everyone will agree with you. Some people will question your decisions. Some may not understand your direction, and that's okay. Agreement is not a requirement for action. You don't need everyone to support you in order to move forward. In fact, if you wait for universal approval, you will never act at all. There is a certain strength in standing alone with your decisions. It forces you to rely on your own thinking. It builds resilience. It teaches you that you can move forward even without external support. And that realization is powerful because it removes a major barrier that holds most people back. Another important shift is learning to separate feedback from approval. Feedback can be useful. It can help you improve, adjust, and grow. But approval is emotional. It is about being accepted, liked, or validated. You can listen to feedback without depending on approval. You can learn from others without needing them to agree with everything you do. The danger of approval seeking is that it often leads you away from your true direction. You start making choices based on what will be accepted rather than what is right for you. You play it safe. You avoid risks. You choose comfort over growth. And over time, you lose connection with your own instincts. When you eliminate the need for approval, you regain that connection. You begin to act with clarity. You make decisions faster. You feel less pressure because you are no longer trying to satisfy everyone. You become more focused, more consistent, and more aligned with your own goals. This doesn't mean you become careless or ignore others completely. It means you stop giving their opinions control over your actions. You listen, you consider, but ultimately, you decide. That balance is what creates strong, grounded confidence. You also need to recognize that people respect those who trust themselves. Even if they don't always agree with you, they can sense certainty. They can see that you are not easily influenced or shaken, and that presence commands attention. It creates a level of respect that approval-seeking never will. Over time, as you continue to act from your own judgment, something begins to shift. You stop questioning yourself as much. You feel more stable in your decisions. You move with more certainty, and that certainty becomes your foundation. Dangerous confidence is built on self-trust. It is not dependent on applause, validation, or agreement. It comes from knowing that you can rely on yourself, that you can make decisions, take action, and handle the outcomes. So start making that shift. Stop looking around for approval. Stop waiting for permission. Bring the focus back to yourself. Ask what you think. Decide what you believe, and then act on it. Because the moment you stop needing approval is the moment you start becoming truly confident. Chapter 8. Control your inner voice. Master your self-talk. The most important conversation you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. It happens constantly, often without you even noticing. A quiet stream of thoughts that comments on your actions, judges your decisions, and predicts your future. And whether you realize it or not, that voice is shaping your confidence every single day. You can face the world with courage, but if your inner voice is filled with doubt, criticism, and hesitation, it will slowly pull you back. It will question your ability. It will remind you of past mistakes. It will exaggerate risks and minimize your strengths. And over time, if left unchecked, you begin to believe it, not because it is true, but because it is repeated. Self-talk is powerful because it feels personal. It doesn't sound like advice from someone else. It sounds like you. That's why it's so easy to accept without question. When your mind says you're not ready or you might fail, you don't argue with it. You listen, and that quiet agreement becomes the reason you hesitate. But here's what you need to understand. Your inner voice is not always accurate. It is influenced by past experiences, fears, and habits. It is not designed to push you forward. It is designed to keep you safe. And safety, in many cases, means staying where you are. So if you rely on that voice without questioning it, you will continue to act within the limits it sets. Mastering your self-talk begins with awareness. You need to start noticing what you are saying to yourself, especially in moments of pressure or uncertainty. When you hesitate, what is the thought behind it? When you avoid something, what are you telling yourself? These patterns are often automatic, but once you become aware of them, you gain the ability to change them. The goal is not to eliminate negative thoughts completely. That's unrealistic. The goal is to stop letting them control your actions. You can feel doubt and still move. You can hear a negative thought and choose not to obey it. That is where control begins. One of the most effective ways to shift your inner voice is to change its tone. Instead of speaking to yourself like a critic, begin speaking to yourself like a leader. A leader does not tear themselves down. They give direction. They focus on what needs to be done, not on what could go wrong. They replace doubt with clarity. For example, instead of saying, "I don't think I can do this," you say, "Do it anyway." Instead of saying, "What if I fail?" you say, "Figure it out as you go." These are not empty affirmations. They are commands. They direct your attention toward action, and over time, they reshape the way you think. Another important shift is to make your self-talk more practical. Vague negativity creates confusion. Clear instructions create movement. When your mind starts to wander into doubt, bring it back to something specific. Ask yourself, what is the next step? And focus only on that. This reduces overwhelm and gives your mind a clear direction to follow. You also need to be consistent. One positive thought will not override years of negative patterns, but repeated, intentional self-talk will. The more you practice speaking to yourself with clarity and strength, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it replaces the old patterns, not because you forced it, but because you trained it. It's important to understand that your inner voice will always try to test you. There will be moments when it gets louder, especially when you are about to do something important. That's when you need to be firm, not emotional, not reactive, just clear. You don't need to argue with it. You don't need to convince it. You simply need to override it with action. Another powerful strategy is to separate yourself from your thoughts. Instead of saying, "I am not confident," recognize that this is just a thought, not a fact. That small shift creates distance. It reminds you that you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. And once you see that, you gain control over how much influence they have. Your inner voice should become a tool, not a barrier. It should guide you, not limit you. It should push you forward, not hold you back. And that only happens when you take responsibility for it. You cannot leave it on autopilot and expect it to serve you. You must train it, shape it, and direct it. Over time, as your self-talk improves, your actions will follow. You will hesitate less. You will decide faster. You will move with more clarity and less resistance. And that consistency will build a deeper level of confidence, one that is not dependent on external validation, but rooted in internal control. Dangerous confidence begins in the mind, not in what others say about you, but in what you say to yourself. Because when your inner voice is strong, clear, and action-focused, nothing outside of you can easily shake it. So listen closely to what you're telling yourself, and if it's not helping you move forward, change it. Speak with intention, speak with direction, and most importantly, speak in a way that pushes you to act. Chapter 9. Act like the person you want to become. You don't become confident and then act. You act, and that action shapes who you become. Yet most people get this backwards. They wait to feel like the confident version of themselves before they begin. They tell themselves, once I improve, I'll start, or once I feel ready, I'll act differently. But that version of you you're waiting for is not something that appears out of nowhere. It is built through behavior, not thought. Your identity is not fixed. It is shaped by what you repeatedly do. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you hesitate, you reinforce the identity of someone who holds back. When you act, you reinforce the identity of someone who moves forward. Over time, these small decisions compound into a clear self-image. You either see yourself as capable or uncertain, decisive or hesitant, confident or doubtful. If you want to change your identity, you cannot wait for it to change internally. You must start expressing it externally. This is where the idea of acting as if becomes powerful. It does not mean pretending or being fake. It means choosing to behave in alignment with the person you want to become, even before it feels natural. Ask yourself a simple question: how would the confident version of me act in this situation? Not what would they feel, but what would they do? Would they speak up? Would they take the opportunity? Would they make the decision without overthinking? Once you have that answer, your job is to act accordingly, regardless of how you feel in that moment. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your current identity will resist it. You may feel like you're not being authentic, but what you're really experiencing is the tension between who you are and who you are becoming. That tension is necessary. It means you are stretching beyond your current limits. The mistake most people make is waiting for their feelings to match their actions. But feelings follow behavior, not the other way around. The more you act like the person you want to become, the more natural it starts to feel. What once felt forced becomes familiar. What once felt uncomfortable becomes your default. You also need to understand that identity is built through repetition, not isolated moments. One bold action will not change how you see yourself, but repeated actions done consistently over time will. This is why it's important to focus on small, daily behaviors that align with your desired identity. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to show up differently, again and again. For example, if you want to become someone who is confident in communication, start speaking up more often. If you want to become disciplined, start following through on small commitments. If you want to become decisive, start making quicker decisions in everyday situations. These actions may seem simple, but they are powerful because they reinforce a new identity. Another important shift is to stop defining yourself by your past. Many people hold on to outdated versions of themselves. They say, "I've always been like this," or "that's just who I am." But that belief keeps them stuck. Your past actions may have shaped your current identity, but they do not have to define your future. You can choose differently at any moment. When you begin to act differently, your mind will try to pull you back. It will remind you of your past behavior. It will question whether you can really change. This is where you need to stay consistent. Don't argue with those thoughts. Override them with action. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you weaken the old one. It's also important to focus on behavior over results. You don't need immediate success to prove that you've changed. What matters is that you are acting differently. Success will come as a result of consistent behavior, but the identity shift begins the moment you choose to act. Over time, something begins to shift inside you. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start thinking, "This is what I do." That change in perspective is powerful. It removes doubt. It replaces hesitation with certainty, and it creates a level of confidence that is not dependent on external outcomes. Dangerous confidence is not about becoming someone else. It is about stepping into the version of yourself that you've been avoiding. It is about acting with intention, even when it feels unfamiliar. It is about building a new identity through consistent action. So stop waiting to feel different. Stop waiting to become. Start acting like the person you want to be. Speak like them, move like them, decide like them, not because you already are that person, but because that is how you become them. Because in the end, you don't become confident by thinking about it. You become confident by acting like it until it becomes who you are. Chapter 10. Build daily discipline. Confidence loves routine. Confidence is not built in big dramatic moments. It is built in the quiet repetition of daily actions. It is not created by motivation, inspiration, or sudden bursts of energy. Those things come and go. What stays, what compounds, what truly shapes who you become is discipline. And discipline is nothing more than doing what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. The problem is most people rely on how they feel. When they feel motivated, they act. When they don't, they wait. This creates inconsistency. Some days they move forward, other days they fall back. And over time that inconsistency weakens their confidence, because deep down they know they cannot rely on themselves. Discipline solves this problem. It removes emotion from the equation. It creates a structure that you follow regardless of your mood. You don't wake up and ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" You already know the answer, because it's part of your routine, and that routine becomes your foundation. There is something powerful about keeping promises to yourself. When you say you will do something and you follow through, you build trust, not with others but with yourself. That trust becomes confidence. It gives you a sense of control. It reminds you that you are not dependent on how you feel. You are guided by what you decide. Routine simplifies your life. It reduces the number of decisions you have to make. Instead of constantly thinking about what to do next, you follow a set path. This frees up mental energy. It removes hesitation, and it allows you to focus on execution instead of negotiation. You don't need a perfect routine. You don't need something complicated or overwhelming. In fact, the simpler it is, the better. The goal is not to create an ideal plan. The goal is to create something you can follow consistently, because consistency is what builds results, and more importantly, it builds identity. Start with a few key actions that matter, things that move your life forward. Commit to doing them daily, or at least regularly, without exception. It could be as simple as working on a skill, taking care of your health, or focusing on your goals for a set period of time. What matters is not the size of the action, but the consistency behind it. At first, discipline will feel difficult. Your mind will resist it. It will look for excuses. It will try to convince you to skip, delay, or adjust. This is normal. You are breaking old patterns and creating new ones. But every time you follow through, you make the next time easier. You strengthen the habit. You reduce resistance. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to rely on motivation to stay consistent. Motivation is unreliable. It fades quickly. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on how you feel. It is built through repetition. The more you act, the less you need motivation. The action itself becomes automatic. You also need to accept that discipline is not always enjoyable. There will be days when you don't feel like doing the work. Days when it feels boring, repetitive, or uncomfortable. But those are the moments that matter the most, because when you act despite those feelings, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are in control. Confidence grows from that proof. It grows from knowing that you can rely on yourself, even when it's not easy. It grows from seeing yourself show up again and again, without excuses. That kind of confidence is strong because it is built on action, not emotion. Another important aspect of discipline is recovery. This does not mean being perfect. There will be days when you miss your routine. That is not the problem. The problem is staying off track. Discipline is not about never failing. It is about returning quickly. It is about getting back on track without turning one mistake into a pattern. You must also protect your routine. There will always be distractions, interruptions, and unexpected events. If you treat your routine as optional, it will always be replaced by something else. But if you treat it as a priority, you will find ways to maintain it, even in difficult situations. Over time, your routine becomes part of who you are. You no longer think about whether you will act, you just do. It becomes automatic, and that consistency builds a level of confidence that is steady and reliable. You are no longer dependent on external factors. You are grounded in your own actions. Dangerous confidence is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in moments of consistency. It is built when no one is watching, when nothing feels exciting, when you simply do what needs to be done, day after day, step by step. So build your routine, keep it simple, follow it consistently, and trust that with time, those small disciplined actions will shape you into someone who is not only confident, but unstoppable. Chapter 11. Learn to fail fast, then move faster. Failure only becomes dangerous when you slow down after it. Not because failure itself is harmful, but because of what you do next. Most people experience a setback and immediately pause. They overanalyze what went wrong, question their ability, and hesitate to try again. That pause is where confidence begins to fade. It is not the failure that weakens you, it is the delay that follows. You have to change the way you see failure. It is not a final result. It is feedback. It is information. It is a signal that shows you what needs to be adjusted. But that information is only useful if you keep moving. If you stop, it turns into doubt. If you continue, it turns into progress. The faster you fail, the faster you learn, and the faster you learn, the faster you improve. This is a simple principle, but it is often ignored because people are trying to avoid discomfort. They want to get it right the first time. They want to avoid mistakes, but that desire slows everything down. It creates hesitation, it leads to overthinking, and it keeps you stuck at the starting point. There is no path to confidence that avoids failure. Every skill, every success, every level of growth comes with mistakes. The difference is how quickly you recover. People with low confidence treat failure as a reason to stop. People with high confidence treat it as a reason to adjust and continue. You must learn to reduce the emotional weight of failure. Right now, you may see it as something negative, something to be avoided, something that reflects poorly on you. But that perspective is what holds you back. Failure is not a judgment of your worth. It is a natural part of the process. It does not define you unless you allow it to stop you. Think about how you would approach a challenge if failure had no emotional impact. If it was simply a step in the process, nothing more. You would act faster, you would try more things, you would take more risks, and because of that, you would learn faster. That is exactly the mindset you need to develop. One of the most powerful habits you can build is immediate action after failure. When something doesn't go as planned, don't sit with it for too long. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and then take another step, even a small one. The goal is to keep the momentum alive, because momentum is what keeps your confidence intact. You also need to stop expecting perfection. Perfection is not the goal, progress is. When you expect everything to go perfectly, you create pressure. That pressure makes you cautious, and caution slows you down. But when you accept that mistakes are part of the process, you become more willing to act. You become more flexible. You become more resilient. Another important shift is to focus on volume, not just results. The more actions you take, the more opportunities you create to learn and improve. If you only take a few careful steps, your progress will be slow, but if you take many steps, even imperfect ones, your growth accelerates. You gain experience faster. You build confidence faster. Failure also teaches you something that success cannot: how to handle difficulty. It shows you how you respond under pressure. It reveals your weaknesses, and it gives you the chance to strengthen them. Without failure, you remain untested, and untested confidence is fragile. You will face moments where failure feels discouraging. That is normal. You are human, but what matters is how long you stay in that state. Do you let it stop you, or do you use it as a reason to move again? That decision determines whether failure becomes a setback or a stepping stone. It's also important to understand that no one remembers your failures as much as you think they do. People are focused on their own lives. The mistakes that feel significant to you are often unnoticed by others, and even if they are noticed, they are quickly forgotten. What matters is not the failure itself, but what you do after it. The people who build strong confidence are not the ones who avoid failure. They are the ones who become comfortable with it. They expect it, they accept it, and most importantly, they move through it quickly. They don't give it time to grow into doubt. They turn it into action. Speed is your advantage, not reckless speed, but decisive movement. The ability to act, learn, adjust, and act again. That cycle is what drives progress, and the faster you move through it, the faster you grow. Dangerous confidence is built on this principle. It is not about always succeeding, it is about always continuing. It is about refusing to let failure slow you down. It is about maintaining momentum, no matter what happens. So stop fearing failure. Stop trying to avoid it. Instead, learn to move through it faster. Take the action, accept the outcome, adjust your approach, and move again. Because in the end, the person who moves the fastest through failure is the one who reaches success the quickest. Chapter 12. Strengthen your body, strengthen your mind. Confidence is not only built in your thoughts, it is expressed through your body. The way you stand, move, breathe, and carry yourself sends constant signals to your mind. You may not always notice it, but your physical state directly affects your mental state. When your body is weak, sluggish, and tense, your mind follows. When your body is strong, energized, and controlled, your mind responds with clarity and confidence. Many people try to fix confidence purely through thinking. They focus on mindset, beliefs, and internal dialogue, but ignore the physical side completely. That creates a gap. Because no matter how much you try to think confidently, if your body is not aligned with that mindset, it becomes difficult to maintain. Your posture collapses, your energy drops, your breathing becomes shallow, and suddenly, doubt feels stronger. Your body is not separate from your mind. It is part of the same system. And if you want to build real, stable confidence, you need to train both. Start with something simple. Posture. The way you hold your body affects how you feel, almost instantly. When you stand upright, shoulders back, head level, you create a sense of presence. You feel more alert, more aware, more in control. But when you slump, when your shoulders drop and your head lowers, your energy follows that position. You feel smaller, less certain, less confident. This is not just psychological, it is physiological. Your body and brain are constantly communicating. Change your posture, and you change the message being sent. Breathing is another powerful tool. When you are anxious or uncertain, your breathing becomes shallow and fast. This signals your body that something is wrong, increasing tension and stress. But when you slow your breathing, when you take deeper, controlled breaths, you send a different signal. You tell your body that you are in control. And that sense of control reduces fear. Movement also plays a key role. When you move with purpose, when your actions are deliberate and steady, you create a sense of confidence. But when your movements are hesitant or rushed, it reflects uncertainty. This is why physical training, whether it's exercise, sports, or simple daily movement, has such a strong impact on confidence. It builds control, strength, and awareness. You don't need to become an athlete to benefit from this. What matters is consistency. Regular physical activity strengthens not only your body, but your discipline. It teaches you to push through discomfort. It shows you that you can improve over time, and that realization carries over into other areas of your life. There is also a direct connection between physical strength and mental resilience. When you challenge your body, you train your mind to handle stress. You learn to stay focused when things get difficult. You learn to keep going when you feel like stopping. And those lessons build a deeper level of confidence, one that is not easily shaken. Energy is another important factor. Confidence requires energy. When you are tired, drained, or unfocused, it becomes harder to act. You hesitate more, you think slower, you feel less certain. But when your energy is high, everything becomes easier. You move faster, you decide quicker, you act with more clarity. This is why taking care of your body matters. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, these are not small details. They directly affect how you think, how you feel, and how you act. Ignoring them weakens your foundation. Taking care of them strengthens it. You also need to be aware of how your physical state changes in different situations. Notice how your body reacts when you feel nervous. Your posture shifts, your breathing changes, your movements become less controlled. Instead of letting that happen automatically, take control. Adjust your posture, slow your breathing, move deliberately. These small adjustments can shift your entire state. Over time, you can train your body to support your confidence instead of working against it. You can build habits that keep you grounded, focused, and in control, even in challenging situations. Another powerful aspect is presence. When your body is steady and controlled, you appear more confident to others. But more importantly, you feel more confident within yourself. You are not distracted by discomfort or tension. You are focused on what you are doing, and that focus strengthens your performance. Dangerous confidence is not just a mindset, it is a state. It is something you carry with you, not only in your thoughts but in your physical presence. It shows in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you respond under pressure. So start paying attention to your body, strengthen it, train it, use it as a tool to support your mind. Because when your body and mind are aligned, your confidence becomes stronger, more stable, and far more powerful. You don't just think confidence, you embody it. Chapter 13. Speak up without fear. Use your voice. Silence can feel safe, but it often costs more than you realize. Every time you hold back your thoughts, avoid expressing your ideas, or stay quiet when you should speak, you are not protecting yourself. You are limiting yourself. Opportunities pass, connections weaken, and your presence fades into the background. Not because you lack something valuable to say, but because you chose not to say it. Your voice is one of the most powerful tools you have. It allows you to express ideas, influence others, create opportunities, and define how you are perceived. But for many people, fear blocks that expression. Fear of judgment, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of being misunderstood. And because of that fear, they choose silence over risk. The problem is, confidence cannot grow in silence. It is built through expression. The more you speak, the more you learn. The more you engage, the more comfortable you become. But if you stay quiet, you deny yourself that growth. You stay stuck in your own thoughts, never testing them, never refining them, never turning them into something real. You need to understand that speaking is a skill, not a talent. It improves with practice. No one starts as a perfect communicator. Everyone goes through moments of hesitation, awkwardness, and uncertainty. The difference is, some people push through those moments, while others avoid them. And that decision determines whether they grow or remain the same. Fear will always be present when you begin to speak more. Your mind will tell you to stay quiet, to avoid attention, to play it safe. But just like any other form of fear, it weakens when you face it. The more you speak, the less power it has over you. Start small. You don't need to make big speeches or take on major conversations immediately. Begin with simple interactions. Share your opinion in a discussion. Ask questions. Contribute ideas, even if they are not perfect. What matters is that you start using your voice instead of suppressing it. Another important shift is to stop aiming for perfection in what you say. Many people hesitate because they want their words to be flawless. They want to sound intelligent, confident, and clear every time. But that pressure creates hesitation. It slows you down, and often it prevents you from speaking at all. Communication is not about perfection, It is about connection. People respond more to authenticity than to flawless delivery. It is better to speak imperfectly than to remain silent, because through speaking you improve. Through silence you stay the same. You also need to focus on clarity over complexity. Confidence in communication does not come from using complicated words or trying to impress others. It comes from expressing your thoughts clearly and directly. When you simplify your message, you reduce hesitation. You make it easier for yourself to speak and easier for others to understand. Another key factor is presence. When you speak, your tone, pace, and body language all matter. Speak slowly enough to be understood. Maintain steady eye contact. Keep your posture strong. These physical elements support your words and make your communication more effective. And as you practice them, they begin to feel natural. It's also important to accept that not everyone will agree with you. When you start speaking more, you open yourself up to different reactions. Some people will support you, others may not. That is part of the process. Your goal is not to please everyone. It is to express yourself honestly and clearly. Over time you will notice something changing. Speaking becomes easier. Your thoughts become more organized. Your confidence grows. Not because you are always right, but because you are no longer afraid to express yourself. You begin to trust your voice. Using your voice also creates opportunities. When you speak, people notice. They understand your ideas, your perspective, your value. This can lead to new connections, new possibilities, and new directions. But none of that happens if you remain silent. You must also remember that your voice has power, even if you don't realize it yet. Your ideas matter, your perspective matters, but they only have impact when they are expressed. Keeping them to yourself serves no one, not you, and not others. Dangerous confidence is not about speaking loudly. It is about speaking without fear. It is about expressing yourself even when there is uncertainty. It is about trusting that your voice deserves to be heard. So start using it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel completely confident. Speak now. Share your thoughts. Ask your questions. Engage in conversations. Because every time you use your voice, you strengthen it. And the more you strengthen it, the more confident you become, not just in what you say, but in who you are. Chapter 14. Take full responsibility. Own your life. Everything begins to change the moment you stop blaming and start owning. As long as you point outward at circumstances, at people, at timing, you give away your power. It may feel justified. It may even be true in some cases. But it keeps you stuck, because if the cause of your situation is outside of you, then the solution must also be outside of you, and that means you wait. Waiting is the opposite of confidence. It creates dependence. It keeps you reacting instead of acting, and over time, it weakens your belief in your ability to change anything at all. This is why taking full responsibility is not just a mindset. It is a shift in control. It brings everything back into your hands. Responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that has happened. It means taking ownership of what happens next. It means deciding that regardless of the past, regardless of the situation, you will choose your response, and that response will move you forward. When you take responsibility, you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about it?" That question is powerful because it leads to action. It forces you to think in terms of solutions instead of problems, and solutions are where progress begins. Blame is easy. It gives you an excuse to stay where you are. It protects you from discomfort. But it also limits you, because every excuse you accept becomes a barrier you don't try to overcome. You convince yourself that your situation is fixed, that your options are limited, that your growth is restricted. Ownership removes those limits. It opens up possibilities. It shifts your focus from what you cannot control to what you can, and that shift changes your behavior. You become more proactive. You look for ways to improve. You take steps, even when conditions are not ideal. This is where confidence starts to grow, not from perfect situations, but from your ability to respond to imperfect ones. When you see yourself taking control, making decisions, and moving forward despite challenges. You build trust in your ability. You prove to yourself that you are not a victim of circumstances. You are a creator of direction. You also begin to see challenges differently. Instead of viewing them as obstacles, you start seeing them as responsibilities. Something to handle, something to solve, something to learn from. This perspective reduces fear. It removes the emotional weight and replaces it with focus. Another important aspect of responsibility is accountability. It means being honest with yourself, recognizing when you fall short, admitting when you avoid, delay or make excuses, not to criticize yourself, but to correct yourself, because without honesty, there is no improvement. Most people avoid this level of honesty because it is uncomfortable. It forces you to face reality. It removes the comfort of excuses, but it also gives you clarity, and clarity is necessary for growth. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. Taking responsibility also strengthens your decision-making. When you know that you are responsible for the outcome, you take your choices more seriously. You think clearly, act intentionally, and follow through with commitment. You stop making casual decisions and start making deliberate ones. There will be moments when things don't go your way. Plans will fail. Efforts may not produce immediate results. In those moments, it is easy to fall back into blame, to point at external factors and justify staying where you are. But that is where you need to stay grounded in responsibility. Ask yourself, what can I do now? And take the next step. Responsibility also gives you freedom, not the kind of freedom that comes from avoiding responsibility, but the kind that comes from control. When you know that your actions shape your results, you are no longer waiting for change, you are creating it. That is a powerful position to be in. You don't need perfect conditions to take responsibility. You don't need everything to be fair or easy. You only need the decision to act, to take ownership of your choices, your actions, and your direction. Dangerous confidence is built on this foundation. It is not dependent on circumstances. It is not shaken by challenges, because it comes from within, from your ability to take control, to respond, to move forward no matter what. So stop giving your power away. Stop waiting for things to change. Take full responsibility for your life. Own your decisions. Own your actions. Own your results. Because when you do that, you stop being controlled by your environment and you start controlling your direction. Chapter 15. Live boldly. Make confidence your default. There comes a point where confidence stops being something you practice and starts becoming who you are. Not because fear disappears, not because life becomes easier, but because you've trained yourself to act no matter what. You no longer wait for the right feeling. You no longer hesitate the way you used to. Action becomes natural, not forced. And that is where everything begins to change. Living boldly does not mean taking reckless risks or chasing constant intensity. It means removing hesitation from your daily life. It means deciding faster, acting sooner, and expressing yourself without holding back. It means choosing movement over delay, clarity over confusion, and action over overthinking. Most people spend their lives in a quiet negotiation with themselves. They think about what they should do, but then they pause, they question, they delay, and that delay becomes a habit. Days pass, opportunities pass, and slowly, without realizing it, they build a life defined by hesitation. You are no longer that person. You have seen what hesitation costs. You understand how fear, overthinking, and the need for approval can control your actions. And now you have a different standard, a new way of operating, one where action comes first and everything else follows. Making confidence your default means removing the need to constantly convince yourself. You don't need long internal debates. You don't need perfect conditions. When something needs to be done, you act. When a decision needs to be made, you decide. When an opportunity appears, you move. At first, this may still require effort. You may need to remind yourself to act, to push through hesitation, to override old patterns. But over time, this becomes automatic. Just like any habit, repetition turns effort into instinct. What once required discipline becomes your natural response. You also begin to trust yourself at a deeper level, not because everything always works out perfectly, but because you know you can handle whatever happens. You've faced fear, you've taken action, you've learned from mistakes. That experience builds a quiet confidence, one that does not need to prove itself, because it has already been tested. Living boldly also changes how you approach opportunities. Instead of asking, "Am I ready for this?" you ask, "Why not me?" That shift opens doors. It allows you to step into situations you might have avoided before, and with each step, you expand your limits. You stop playing small. You stop holding back your ideas, your voice, your actions. You begin to show up fully, without constantly filtering yourself through fear or doubt. And that presence creates impact. People notice it. Opportunities respond to it. Life begins to move in a different direction. It's important to understand that boldness is not loud or aggressive. It is steady. It is controlled. It is consistent. It is the ability to act without hesitation, even in ordinary moments. Because confidence is not built in rare situations, it is built in everyday actions. You will still face challenges. There will still be uncertainty, but your response to those moments will be different. You will not freeze. You will not retreat. You will move. And that movement is what separates you from those who remain stuck. Another key part of living boldly is letting go of the need to be perfect. Perfection slows you down. It creates pressure. It makes you overanalyze. But bold action requires imperfection. It requires you to move before everything is figured out, to adjust as you go, to learn through experience. You must also maintain your standards. Confidence is not something you build once and keep forever without effort. It requires consistency. It requires you to keep acting, keep deciding, keep moving. The moment you return to hesitation, the old patterns begin to return, so you stay aware, you stay committed. Over time, this way of living becomes your identity. You no longer think of yourself as someone trying to be confident. You simply are. Your actions reflect it. Your decisions reflect it. Your presence reflects it. Dangerous confidence is not about feeling powerful. It is about being reliable in your actions. It is about knowing that no matter the situation, you will move forward, that you will not wait, that you will not hold back. So from this point forward, make a decision, not to try, not to hope, but to live differently, to remove hesitation from your life, to act when it matters, to speak when it counts, to move when others pause. Because in the end, confidence is not something you think about, it is something you live, and when you live it consistently, it becomes your default. Conclusion. Confidence was never something you were supposed to wait for. It was something you were supposed to build, and now you understand how. Not through endless thinking, not through perfect planning, and not through waiting for the right moment, but through action. Consistent, intentional, and often uncomfortable action. You've seen the truth. Fear does not disappear before you act. It weakens after you act. Doubt does not go away on its own. It fades when you stop listening to it. And confidence is not a personality trait reserved for a few. It is a skill, available to anyone willing to practice it. The difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is not intelligence, talent, or luck. It is decision. The decision to act before feeling ready. The decision to move despite fear. The decision to trust yourself without needing approval. These decisions repeated daily create a life that most people only think about but never live. There will still be moments of hesitation. There will still be fear. That does not change. What changes is your response. You no longer see fear as a stop sign. You no longer treat doubt as truth. You no longer wait for permission. You act anyway. This is your new standard. You act when it's uncomfortable. You decide when it's uncertain. You speak when it's difficult. You move when others hesitate. And through that you build something stronger than temporary confidence. You build self-trust. The kind of trust that tells you, no matter the situation, you will show up, you will act, and you will handle what comes next. Life will not slow down for you. Opportunities will not wait for you. And time will continue to move, whether you act or not. So the question is no longer whether you are ready. The question is whether you are willing to step forward without guarantees, willing to face discomfort without retreating, willing to become someone who does not wait. Because everything you want, growth, success, freedom, exists on the other side of action. Not perfect action, not fearless action, just action. So take what you've learned here and apply it immediately. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Start with one decision, one step, one move, and then another. Build momentum, build proof, build yourself. This is not about changing your life overnight. It is about changing how you respond, moment by moment, day by day. And if you stay consistent, if you keep acting, you will look back and realize something powerful. You are no longer the person who hesitated. You are someone who moves. And that is the code. Live it.